Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the ranking of all the movies I watched in 2020. For the next 15 minutes or so, I'll be counting down movies 100 to 91. Hope you enjoy. Before I begin, I would like to clarify that I've aggregated these rankings based off of IMDb, and with IMDb, the issue is you can only rate, say, 7 out of 10, so it's hard to get really intricate with the rankings. So I personally rank them based on how much I enjoy them. It is very hard to compare dramas and with comedies and other genres. So, and at the end of the day, this is just subjective. This is just my list. So I hope you take that into mind. We're going to be starting off number 100 on a somber note with World Trade Center. And obviously, everyone knows the story about this event. It's one of the most tragic events in modern human history. And director Oliver Stone takes a unique approach by profiling New York City firefighters in the lead up to the event in action. And it's a very traumatic and depressing movie. Obviously, you have these two firefighters who end up being trapped in rubble, and whom it's bleak for them to even survive. And it's obviously based on a true story, and it's horrific what happened. But at the same time, the issue I have with some Oliver Stone movies is that he tends to fictionalize the heroism, almost putting his own spin on it. Now, for this movie, it's impossible to do that without having to show the truth. But there are some Hollywood like drama that is added to make it more palatable. But overall, it's a very important film on a day that shall live in infamy, and personally found it eye-opening, specifically considering I did not experience the event, or nor I have memories from it. So anywho, number 99 is La Vita Davanti a Se, or The Life Ahead. As I took Italian for my university level course, I wanted to branch out and watch more Italian cinema. Specifically, I watched this movie off Netflix in October, and obviously the performance by Sophia Loren was spectacular, potentially Academy Award nominated. It follows her as she is this former escort who is taking care of other escorts' children as she grows a bond with this black child. And it's really cute to see the bond grow from, oh, he's seen as this troublemaker to he's seen as an invaluable member of their orphanage. But and I don't expect a lot of this kind of movie. These kind of movies, they're only 90 minutes long, and again, Netflix movies, you expect them to be good, but nothing more. But this one, I think, is about an above average Netflix movie. However, it's not so much the fact that the film is fully in Italian that confused me. It was just the storyline itself, and it seemed like it was trying to preach to every minority group, and specifically they had a transgender woman in the movie. Storyline was convoluted at times and difficult to understand. Just That's just all I have to say about it. For our next movie, we go into the comedy genre now with Palm Springs. This movie is a very clever and quirky movie. I found it, don't get me wrong, I found it funny, but I also kind of felt unfulfilled in a way. And I get it's with these types of movies, they're like with Groundhog Day, Edge of Tomorrow, they have the trope of having the day repeat itself, and eventually the characters learn more about themselves and are able to finally escape this circle. And this movie's no different in that way. And And actually, I would say Andy Samberg really dove into the dramatic acting that he's yet to fulfill. I mean, he's mostly been a comedic actor, a very good one to say the least. But this one, he really stepped up his drama game, and not to mention his chemistry with Christian Milioti was excellent. But I think that what's preventing me from putting this higher is the fact that I watched this later in the year. I would still say this is no doubt one of my top 10 movies of 2020, but overall, a decent watch. And I kind of wish it was actually longer. That would probably even further my placement on the list. Our next film is another movie from Netflix that I was kind of mixed about, but I eventually grew a little bit more. The Five Bloods. So I was pretty hyped for this movie when it was announced. They had a great cast. Obviously, after finishing The Wire, had two, Clark Peters and Isaiah Whitlock Jr. So that was intriguing, along with Chadwick Boseman. I don't know if I would say that it fulfilled my expectations, though. Specifically, the fact that the movie really starts out slow, and it's almost a hangout movie for the first half. I mean, it kind of takes me out of it. And then when they eventually get to the action's predictable, and the death of characters is predictable. And while there's no doubt the acting in the movie is terrific, and I advocate for Delroy Lindo, that he should be nominated for an Academy Award, 100%. But the thing is that they spend so much time hanging out in this movie that they don't really have a lot of high-end character development. Sure, they have the characters bringing his son along, and you have the father-son dynamic, and trying to empathize with those who served in the Vietnam War and how they were subjected to treacherous treatment. And obviously you gotta empathize with that. There's no doubt about that. But the thing is that the whole plot of the movie is these five men are going back to retrieve these riches that were promised to them, and they feel like they're supposed to liberate their, and it's kind of far-fetched to say the least. And not to mention, within the story, there's just other stories of this other legendary leader that was Chadwick Boseman, other battalion. And having served in the Vietnam War, it's one thing to get a specific view set of the world, and specifically is addressed through Delroy Lindo's character, who's antagonizes this Donald Trump supporter who has a "Make America Great Again" cap, and it really questions the humanity that it doesn't matter your politics or whatever. At the end of the day, you fight for your country. But I understand, I respect the messages that Spike Lee had in this movie. I didn't think they were too pushy, but it definitely wasn't trying to be subtle. And I think that editing could have been worked on a little bit. I don't think this movie had to be that long. And in fact, there were some moments in the movie that were almost comical, particularly when Isaiah Whitlock Jr. is his usual word. I won't spoil it what he said, but it didn't need to be in the movie. It was almost like it was being self-aware on it with a serious subject matter too. It just didn't fit in this movie. This movie could be nominated for Best Picture, and I wouldn't oblige to it. I think it's a very well-crafted film, and that delves on the messages and themes of the Vietnam War to a perfect extent. But overall, just if they would have fixed some editing issues here and there, I think it would have been higher on my list. Next, we have another Vietnam War movie, along with another movie from Oliver Stone, Born on the 4th of July. And I wonder when I watched this movie. If it's not obvious, I watched this on the 4th of July. And this is actually an antonym of what the 4th of July represents. This is an anti-war movie. and based off a true story. And like with World Trade Center, Oliver Stone tends to martyrize these heroes and doesn't like to really show their faults. And it's it profiles the life of Vietnam War veteran Ron Kovic, who is seen as this all-American high school student and who decides to go serve for his country in the war and ends up paralyzed both mentally and physically, losing his legs. And it's a really depressing movie. I wouldn't actually recommend watching it because it's just so depressing. And it delves on the issues that the American society has on veterans, how when they return to the United States, they're seen as useless because not only because of the trauma they attributed mentally through PTSD, but also the physical scars they gain. And I think this movie definitely delves in those issues, but it also drags on in the middle, and there's really no goal after. He's just going around the country spreading his message of anti-government, culminating in his actions at the 1972 Republican National Convention, where he which is a true story, that he entered the convention and spoke of his dissent to the government. So it's an important movie, but it's not a very palatable movie. Now we're gonna go completely in a different direction with Phineas and Ferb, the movie Candace Against the Universe. Now this movie almost didn't make my list because it's actually less than 90 minutes long. It's the shortest movie I watched this year. And first of all, I gotta say, Phineas and Ferb is my favorite animated show of all time. The fact is, it's almost comparable to Community in a way, in that it delves on issues that all people can relate to, and it tries to embrace your inner kid, and it's really wholesome. And the movie touches on that. It returns to the same tropes that the TV show did, and I really liked it in that way. And I like the meta jokes here and there. It's not the best. It doesn't compare to the Across the Second Dimension film from almost 10 years ago, and it's obviously missing on the charm that the TV show had. But it's still an enjoyable 90 minutes that I definitely would watch it again. Next, we have In the Heat of the Night, a Best Picture winning film of 1967 that, like with The Five Bloods, speaks on the message of how black people are treated in society. And even in the 1960s, I'd say this is more of a progressive film with the Sidney Poitier character, detective, who's forced to work with this other white police officer to solve this crime, while also experiencing racial intolerance. And even though the movie was made over 50 years ago, it's a really the premise hits close to home with what's happening, with at least what was happening in June and still is happening right now. And it's really, you feel incredibly bad for the Sidney Poitier character in this movie, and it's a very interesting movie, and it's actually the oldest movie I watched this year. So overall, I would definitely recommend it. Next we have Bad Santa. Now I previously mentioned Bad Santa 2, but Bad Santa is the cream of the crop in terms of if you Hollywood Christmas movies. And I don't know where to start this movie. I mean, premise is this mall Santa who also works part-time as a criminal, and whom is the whole premise that he's just seen as the antithesis of what mall Santas are supposed to be, this fatherly figure, and he's perceived as this drunk and lazy Santa who and apathetic Santa who doesn't care about kids and only cares about money and alcohol. But eventually changes the tune when he meets this kid, and he eventually grows to try to grow out of this life. And I think it's quite wholesome in that case. Obviously, you don't expect much from this movie, but it does have an underlying message of trying to be a good person over the holidays, and it really resonates with me in a way. Not the whole criminal stuff or the drunkenness that Billy Bob Thornton's character experiences, just the whole wholesomeness of Christmas, and I think that the movie delivers on that message. Next, we have Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Now, I would not consider myself a connoisseur of Quentin Tarantino films. This is the first Quentin Tarantino film I've actually ever watched, and I've heard rumors here and there of why. I understand why people like Quentin Tarantino movies. They have a different kind of essence to them. They make you forget about the real world and just be invested in this environment. And he likes to put his own little spin on things. And when it comes to and with this movie, it's no different. Specifically, the fact that he wanted to put his own spin on the 1960s and specifically change the future. And I don't know if I won't spoil what happens, but it's satisfying to say the least. And there are some funny moments in it, but there's a lot of violence in this movie. There's no doubt about that. And it's a very long movie too. And as a result, it kind of drags in the middle. And the characters are portrayed very well. Obviously, Brad Pitt won a Best Supporting Actor for this movie. And overall, I think that if this is his last movie, it was a good way to go out. But these aren't my favorite kinds of movies. So it is what it is at the end of the day. And last but not least for today, number 91, 21 Jump Street. Now the directing duo of Phil Lord and Chris Miller they can't do anything wrong. I mean, and this movie's no different. This is their first real Hollywood film they made. I mean, I know they made Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, but this was what put them into the mainstream. And this movie is very funny, to say the least. And I actually think that it could be funnier in some ways, but it also adds to this dramatic element to it, where the two characters, Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum, are trying to seek something towards their experience in high school. You know, with Jonah Hill, in high school, he was perceived as this nerd, and he gets to switch roles in this movie, and he's seen as this cool guy, this cool and who gets all the girls, while Channing Tatum is seen as a nerd. And it's really interesting to say the least. And obviously, at the same time, they're trying to infiltrate this drug operation that's going on in the high school, and it's very entertaining to say the least. There's some very funny moments, particularly the moment where they get high. I like that. But overall, it's a good hangout movie. There are some existential elements to it, but it doesn't get you thinking anything else, and that's what it's designed to do. It's just designed to be entertaining. I respect it for that. So that's my list for today. I hope you enjoyed, and join me next time as I count down movies 90 to 81. Arrivederci.